Okay, do we have anyone who would like to read the Mishnah number 5? And then I will take it very sentence by sentence and discuss as we go. Do we have, I can't see, let me see. I only see us two. But if anyone wants to read.
Mattias, if you just put a gallery view from the top, if you click view and then gallery, you'll be able to see everyone.
Very good, Shkoyach, thank you. Now I have it. Do we have anyone who wants to read? Now is the time to speak up. Otherwise, I'll choose someone. No one wants to read. So usually someone wants to read. It's in English. You don't have to read in Hebrew. You can read in English, or in Danish, or Norwegian, or Swedish, or even Finnish.
Okay, I'll unmute now there.
Thank you.
He used to say, "A brute is not sin-fearing, nor is an ignorant person pious. Nor can a timid person learn, nor can an impatient person teach. Nor will someone who engages too much in business become wise. In a place where there are no men, strive to be a man."
Okay, that's an interesting translation. So, Rav Shmuel, should we just go and do this step by step and discuss it? Okay. So you want to go for it, and I'll.
Sure. Okay. So, Hu Haya Omer, we are still learning the words of Hillel, and he starts with these words Ein bo yerechet. And a brute is not sin-fearing, right? Brute is, of course, it's a difficult translation. I saw another word, a boar, in some of the translations,
or
something similar to bour. It's important. I'm just paying attention to the word because the next sentence is so similar. Yeah, both convey a similar idea. A brute is not sin-fearing, nor is an ignorant person pious. It's basically somebody who is simple. He cannot really be serving God properly. But they're small. There are 2 points. Yeah, none of the words of the Mishnah are in vain. So the first one is somebody who's like a rough person, who's not cultured. He's not perhaps. He doesn't. He's missing maybe common sense, understanding these things. He will never be able to be truly God-fearing, right? That means to say, or sin, or to have a fear of sin. You need knowledge, you need understanding in order to be to have fear of sin, right? It's a common discussion in Jewish thought that you can have the best intentions, but if you don't know what you're doing, you will go wrong, right?
So I wonder if wonder if this ain't bored. This also there's another way you can translate is ignorant, and I wonder if this person. I just want to read. I just found this now where Rabbi Hirsch says about it. I thought it was a little bit interesting. Bored. It's a person who's totally ignorant and has no idea of the conditions that prevail around him and of the duties that he must fulfill. Hence, he will sin without even being aware that he's doing something wrong, which is, it seems like this is like an ignoramus, someone who he has, as you say in America, has no idea what's flying maybe. And I wonder if he's the kind of person that you can never, is there any hope for him? That's what you hear, Shmuel, do you think that this is a person you could teach?
Right. So we're talking about the bull.
Yeah.
The bull is not a brute, a person who's completely simple. He has nothing. He cannot be a yerechet. He can't be a God-fearing person because fear of sin, being a good person, these things require knowledge. They require understanding. You have to know what's good and what's not good.
But it also requires it to be like if we put it in contrast, which we're going to discuss in a sec with Amma Oretz, then like if I maybe I could just like see if I can try to explain what I think an Amma Oretz is referring to, and to go back to this bur, because an Amma Oretz seems to be a person who is very knowledgeable in a lot of things. In other words, that person will have to have a nice profession. He would be good at certain things, would be understanding of how human beings interact with each other and all these different codes, and could be a very, very, very brilliant person. He's just lacking that fine-tuning. Let's see. He's lacking the fine-tuning that is to have someone has taught him what we're doing right now, the ways of the Torah, the ways of like trying to get to that next level, and really how to be able to get there with a real guidance, which would be again our tradition. This brute or this ignorant person seems to be someone who doesn't really know anything that well, and seems to be difficult to influence that person to really get knowledge of anything. And I think maybe that is a big distinction between them. I don't want to say there's no hope for this person. There's hope for everyone, and everyone can learn more. But this seems to be a person who maybe doesn't care so much about things in general. Do you agree with that comparison?
Yes, that does seem to be the idea, and that is how the commentaries also explained. Amaretz is not an ignoramus, he's not a simple person, but he's not knowledgeable in the Torah. And therefore, to call him a chassid, is never going to work. He's going to be a pious person. He could still be a yerechet. He could be a good person at some level. He might not know all the details of what is good and what is bad. But because he's got a basic good character traits, he can have a certain feeling of what is good and bad. But he'll never rise to the level of chassid, somebody who's pious, somebody who follows God's ways. Chassid is a very interesting word in general. It comes up in Pirkei Avot. It comes later on in Jewish philosophy, Jewish literature. Very often we use the word tzaddik and chassid, and sometimes they're used a bit interchangeably. But very often we mean specifically the chassid. It means somebody who is not content with just keeping the letter of the law. I once heard a very nice parable between the tzaddik and the chassid. A tzaddik is a person who says, okay, this is what the law is. I'm going to keep it 100%. I have to respect my parents, let's say, an example. My parents ask me to make me a coffee. I make them a coffee. So he's a tzaddik. Chassid is somebody who tries to think what's good. So father asks for a coffee. So you go a bit further than that. Maybe there's a special type of coffee he likes. Maybe your father is asking that because he's very tired. He wants to stay awake because he feels he's got something important to do. Maybe you can ask him if you could do that instead for him. You sort of try to go deeper than just your obligations, further than just your obligations, rather. And this is a very dangerous game to play. Because if you don't know, if you do it right, you can do something amazing and you can be a true chassid. But then the Talmud also speaks about the concept of the chassid shoteh, the stupid chassid or the silly chassid, the person who might think he's doing something very religious, but actually he's doing something very wrong,
Right.
Give you an example.
Oh, sorry, go right there. Continue.
No, sure. Somebody does something wrong out of ignorance on Shabbat, and he enters the synagogue and turns on the lights or something. So somebody might feel very pious at screaming at him and telling him you're breaking Shabbat, but he might be doing something really wrong. He might push off this person for ever coming back to the synagogue again, and he will never have any connection to Judaism again, and he will assimilate. So Chassidut, trying to be very holy, can be very good, but if it's not coming from a lot of knowledge of Torah, then it can go completely the wrong way. But
it's very, very, very good. And I just wanted to add on, if I might to this, like I feel like Hillel is telling us first, like there's something called when you learn Gemara, it's called a hava amina. A hava amina is you wrongfully could have thought. So don't have any hava aminot of becoming a chassid before you stop being an amaretz. In other words, like make sure that you know something, and if like don't do things because they seem like, oh, I want to, like unfortunately you see people who sort of skyrocket and they want to become something they're not. Like take it step by step. If you're going to come to this level, come to it the right way, and like stop by being an Amor. Stop, like, first humble yourself to know what you not know, and then see what that could do with you, and be proud of what you have. But like, I very much agree with this, that you have some people think that like being frum, even, which is what a chosid also could be, like a frimme yid or a frumme yid, is to tell other people what they're doing wrong. And nothing could be more wrong. Like, it's the worst thing you can do, to embarrass a person. It says it straight up, it's like killing someone. To make someone embarrassed in public, even if it's something that's like much wrong, you have to do it in a very, very nice way. This is something that everyone should know. If you're a rabbi, if you're not a rabbi, whatever it is, if you're going to tell something that person doing wrong, you do it out of love. You do it with a very, like, with a smile, and you tell them, listen, I saw you did this, you know what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can never, so it's a good example of, so that's a chassid shoite mamash, who screams at someone for doing something wrong in public.
If I can just think in terms of the regular, like the wider world, and there's certain human nature to get excited, especially by youngsters, whether it's about animal rights, whether it's about social justice, whether it's about all sorts of things. And very often you find some of these people demonstrating in the street have actually very limited knowledge on the subject that they make a lot of noise about. So I think this Pirkei Avot is very universal. It's just universally good advice for people. But before you get excited about something, like, don't be an Amar, don't be a simpleton who wants to be a Chassid, who's like screaming and getting very excited. Before you actually know what the matter is, first study the matter and research it properly before you express a very strong opinion.
Yeah. If more people would listen to this advice, we would have less problems in this world. So maybe we could start making a revolution here in the Nordic Bet Midrash. But it's actually true. Like, have strong feelings about things, but know where it's coming from. And very often, your first reaction is never going to be the right one when you react to something. If you hear someone saying something and you hear, like, you always have to go back to a more of a, how's it called, place of a little bit, being a little bit more cool about it. Fine. Should we continue onwards? Mm-hmm. Where are we? Yeah. So continue, and I'll jump in.
Lo habaishan lamed. So the timid, nor can a timid person learn. Timid as in a shy person. And this is on a simple level. Just the commentaries explain. A shy person, he's not going to ask questions, right? And the questions are the key to understanding. Yeah, this is very, 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 very essential in the whole Jewish way of study, that it's not listening to a lecture that actually gives the knowledge. The knowledge is the questions, is discussion, is questioning the lecture. One who is scared to say anything, he will never enter that knowledge, you know.
Right. Sorry, go ahead. I keep interrupting. I have such bad timing when it comes to Zoom. I just wanted to say what Rav Shmuel said when we were learning this. He said there's no bad questions, just bad answers. And I just want to add one thing before I actually want to pose the questions to everyone here, if you don't mind, is that, like, when I was learning in place called the Jerusalem College, where I learned to become a rabbi, the best thing that you could hear was when the rabbi said, "You're asking good." Nothing was nicer. That was the nicest thing you could hear. But I would like to ask you, and why is it? And I experienced this a lot here in Stockholm, and I can imagine it's just similar in a lot of places in the world, that people have a very hard time admitting that they don't know anything. That they don't know a certain thing, something that they feel they should know, and they have a very hard time admitting to themselves, or even like being so shy to admit in front of people that I am lacking this knowledge. And I don't understand why that's something to be ashamed of. And I like, is this something that maybe if someone has a thought of this, because this is very interesting to me. And unfortunately, what it does, it makes you get stuck, because it's a beautiful thing to want to learn more things. And everyone, as a rule, when you ask them, they are so happy to explain. And I never met someone so far. I haven't had anyone say, "Oh, you don't know this." I never met that. And I like, so why is it so difficult to admit that you don't know something? Why is it so scary? Does anyone have any thought of this? Rabbi Shmuel, of course, too. I'm just like, if anyone who's listening have any thoughts why it's so difficult, I would love to hear it. I guess the silence says it all.
Yeah. You feel ashamed.
But why? I'm asking serious, why? Why do you don't like? How could we know everything?
You're expecting that from yourself to know.
So you think it's mostly yourself. You feel like this is something that me as a person, I should have known. And since I don't, I'm so disappointed in myself that I don't want to admit it.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's So you have very high expectations of yourself.
Of course. Yeah.
Which you should. I'm not saying that's, of course, that's good, but yeah, I hear it. But it's something very liberating to admitting to yourself that you don't know.
You're right. You're right.
It's something, and the second you actually do it, you realize you start learning much more. And there's so much fun things to learn. I said this before, but there's a word in Swedish that's just fantastic, which is called vetgirig. Vetgirig means like you just got to know. And I think that's what we all should strive to have. You just want to, someone wrote something on the chat, 1 second, that people are raised in the manner that they're always right. Yeah, that's also something. Yeah, is that true that people, we're so like, that's the other way. But maybe that comes from the same place. If like, special, okay. The people feel, people are raised in the manner that they're always right and special. But maybe that also comes from the same thing, that if you feel that, you never had to admit that you don't know something, which is the scary thing. Anyhow, if anyone anything else they would like to add, please go right ahead.
I'm not sure that it always has to be that you're afraid to admit that you are not. It could also be a kind of attitude towards learning that involves to kind of try to say what you think, even if it's not. If you know that it's not right, you know that you don't know, but you try to understand by giving your thought of what is. I mean, if you watch a very complicated movie, in the beginning you actually don't understand anything, but you don't say I don't understand anything here. You understand something. So you try to put the pieces together by being kind of active. And that could also be a kind of attitude that you're not passively admitting that I don't know anything. You try to understand but that could be different learning methods, I think. But that doesn't mean that you think that you know. It's just another way to present your not knowing is by saying what you think, based on the pieces you heard and your lack of knowledge.
Yeah, that might be even another thing. Some people want to share it and have opinion. That's more like Rabbi Shmuel said, that sometimes seems like you share opinions about something that you don't really have a knowledge in, which is also sort of problem. But can I ask you, Losh, because I know correct me if I'm wrong, you're a lawyer, right? Yeah. So for me, that tells me that you know certain things that I don't know, and if I get an opportunity to ask you something, I see that's an opportunity to learn something more, because you have an expertise that I don't have, and like that's the way I try to view anything. Let's say we're surrounded with so much information that we have a feeling that we know everything. That is a good point. I must say that today we're fed with like just perfect bite-sized pieces of information that we don't process. We just take them and then we think we know something. That's a big problem. Acknowledge our mistakes is learning and gold. Yes, very, very true. Okay, Shmuel, should we go weiter? Sorry, I just wanted to hear a little bit. I hope it's okay. I thought it was
Very good, excellent. Lo hakapdan melamed. So here we tell, nor can an impatient person teach. Yeah. So I thought the translation was interesting. Impatient, of course, means that you have no patience, and that's how the commentary explains, no patience to respond to people's questions. So this is sort of like the other side of the first statement. First, we said, if you are too shy to ask, you won't learn. But also, if the teacher doesn't bother answering the questions, then he can't teach. But actually, if you go a bit deeper into the word kapdan, to be makpid, in the sense that it's used in Hebrew, in Aramaic, usually to be a kapdan, to be a makpid, is connected to sort of being strict, being demanding. We say somebody is very makpid on his honor, for example. We mean to say that he doesn't forgive if somebody says doesn't respect him the way that is befitting him. So that's why I was wondering, there's also another idea that if the teacher is like too strict and asserts his authority too much, then he will lose that sort of connection to the students that he maybe needs. I mean, it's all connected to the same idea, answering questions, expecting questions, encouraging questions, and answering questions. That is already a fact. You create a connection with your students. If you don't have that and it gets too official, then you're sort of creating a barrier between you and the students and the teachers. And I think this line is really important because it actually comes as a contrast to a lot of things that we speak about in the Talmud in general. Usually the Talmud puts a lot of stress on the respect of the teacher. I'm not sure if you already covered them in the previous chapter, but definitely there'll be very big statements. It says you respect your teacher like respecting God. There's very strong words about the obligations to stand in front of your rabbis and your teachers in all around the Talmud. But here we're sort of saying that all of that is true, but a teacher has to create a pleasant setting in order for education to happen correctly. What do you think of, Mattias?
No, 100%. And also, I think this is a very, it's an interesting thing because it's a fine line. There has to be this level of feeling that the teacher has knowledge that I don't have, and therefore automatically I do respect that person. There should also be that it's an environment when you don't feel like you have to be embarrassed to ask anything you want. And that goes for any relationship, I would say, happens to be. That's what we're striving for. A teacher is there to sort of encourage a warm, nowadays it's important to have a warm and open and intellectually honest environment where you could ask a lot of those questions. But I'm struggling to understand really what the good translation of this, what this really is. It seems like someone like Rav Hirsch says that it's someone who is a pedantic person, who's lacking patience with beginners, whose learning capacity is largely undeveloped, and you don't have patience. So maybe the patience is something, but I do agree with what you said, that like someone who has an hakpada, someone who's makbid at something, is not really the way I would like. It's used differently here. Is it like this is not the way we're used to hearing this word, but it must mean something that, like, if you don't create an environment where your students feel welcome and could ask and are encouraged to ask, and you only have like sort of a very strict hierarchy when you are like sort of only showing what's up, so to say, that seems to be a problem. But I could admit quite honestly that I'm struggling to find a good translation. It must be something to do with savlanut. If you don't have savlanut, if you don't have sovel, if you don't have that, it's very difficult to be a teacher. But I guess also it could be talking about you have to be able to connect to your students where your students are at, to see where your students are at, and when the people you're speaking to try to like sort of pinpoint what they want to hear and what level they are at. That could also be what it's talking about.
It's actually fascinating. I find that the Talmud speaks about this like almost 2,000 years ago, when these are actually concepts that are discussed nowadays, like among teachers and in the educational world. Like there was the old-fashioned teaching that was very lecturing and very strict, and then there is like the new style, which is more student-orientated, involving the students more. But the Talmud is talking about this a long, long time before that. So that's why it's fascinating to find these ideas here.
It's absolutely fascinating. It's personally, it's very nice to know that we've been thinking about this for a long time. And the Jewish way of doing chinuch seems to be that each and every child or every person is a unique person that have its own like capability of growth and capability of becoming who that person is meant to be. And really, like the way we do it still, that we sort of have big classes and we have one curriculum for everyone. It doesn't seem to be the Jewish way. I understand it's difficult to do it any other way, but it seems to be that you like each and every person, you have to be chomoch lenar ledarko. You have to find within every child what that person needs, with every person. So it's maybe that's also what it's talking about here. But I do agree with that. It's very fascinating to see how much of what's becoming, what we're discussing today, should change within the system, the school system. I wonder if Sweden and Finland have a similar school system. I think they do nowadays. No,
probably.
Yeah, but that's a different discussion. Fine. Should we go on?
Okay, nor will someone who engages too much in business become wise. Right. It's actually an interesting sentence. We're talking about it when we're reviewing this text. But yeah, that's the simple meaning here, is that basically, if you're very busy with business, that will sort of like block, or at least you won't become as wise. You won't be able to learn as much Torah. Your mind will not be occupied in the Torah to the extent as it should. It's interesting because you would expect, like, it doesn't say kol hamarbe b'schora lo machkim. Whoever like gets busy with business will not become wise. It's like saying not everybody who does business will become wise. So it sounds, I don't know, I just got a feeling that the Talmud is not trying here to put down being busy with business. There's a lot of talk about the importance of supporting your family, and we'll find that the same Pirkei Avot will criticize very strongly people who don't who don't do that. But it's like saying that the more busy, I think that's that, the busier you get with other things, the more those other things, even if they're good things, even if they're not bad things, they're positive things, but at the end of the day, they will take away from your chance to study Torah, to consider what's really important in life. What are your thoughts?
So I just want to add what we discussed also when we were learning. It might also be saying, and sorry, Cecilia, I'll just finish this and then it's your turn. It might also be saying, and this I think is a very human way of thinking, that if only I was rich, then I would have time to do this and this and this. If only I was this, then I would be able to invest in time for this. In other words, we have a tendency to be thinking, if I'm not where I'm at right now, then I can accomplish a lot of things. And I wonder if that might also be something it's telling us, that like, no, you like the place where you start, the place where you do anything is from where you're at right now. It doesn't matter if you're rich or not. Of course, like the Gemara talks about that it's a blessing, and it's not a blessing to be rich, but it's also a blessing and not a blessing to be poor. And if you're gonna choose between the two, we're gonna choose to be rich. But like both of them comes with different challenges. Anyhow, Cecilia was first, so please go right ahead. Right, you have to unmute. Has to unmute.
Okay.
Now,
How do you define wise?
here I would say it's talking about someone who has a knowledge of Torah and has incorporated that into his life.
So whatever you do, you can become wise without being a bit in a business or in any occupation you have. You can always be a Talmudic wise. Okay.
100%. You don't have to be rich to be a learned person.
No, I agree.
Quite the opposite. It has been a lot of, in our history, has been a lot, and in both happens to be. Some of the richest people, like Rabbi Yosef ben Horkanos was one of the richest Jews around, and he was one of the, so it's both.
Yeah.
But maybe it's saying it's not, they will not automatically go hand in hand. And someone who becomes rich obviously have some sort of wisdom in knowing how to become rich. But this chokhmah, I would say, is talking about what we would say real chokhmah, and that would be coming from the Torah.
Okay.
That's my opinion. If Shmuel have something else, please fire it. Like, go ahead.
No, I think it's a really good point. There's different words for wisdom in Hebrew. They can mean different things, and sometimes you can talk about being a Pirkei, being a clever person, and that would relate to like perhaps business or knowledge of the world. I think when we're talking about chokhmah, we're talking about greater knowledge of the Torah, knowledge of our purpose in life, understanding deeper matters, and so that's I think the concept here. So,
okay, Lars, you're up.
Yes, I wonder since it's mentioned business here, it's not mentioned like if you're occupied by anything that draws you from the Torah, then you're not always going to be wise. It's just like business is mentioned here. I mean, would it be like if you not everybody who deals with medicine or with being teacher for children or something like that, that would not be as problematic connected to wisdom as business, as I understand it. So what is it with just business? That is, why is just business of all kind of absorbing activities that you can draw you away from the Torah that is special? Why is just business mentioned? Is it instrumental in some way, or what is it?
Shmuel, do I get the reshut to start? Because I have
please.
So I obviously don't have an answer, but I've been thinking about this also, like in general, and where I'm holding right now is something like this. I think business. Why do you do business? One very big reason is to make money. Okay. And in this world, obviously, a long time ago as well, people were chasing money in a way that is not so healthy. In today's day and age, I would imagine it's even worse. And I will take it even further. When we're talking about like Avodah Zarah, which is idol worship, sometimes when you hear about it, it's very difficult to relate to. But maybe, and just maybe, very much maybe, some people chase after money and are addicted to making money, and the way they talk about making money and the way they get obsessed with making money is a little bit of idol worship. In other words, this is something that's so powerful, but it also sort of, it's very right now. It's very this world. It's very physical. Money has a tendency to draw you to wanting more and more and more and more. And once you let that part of you, something take a hold of you, it's difficult to engage in something which is more of a spiritual nature, which is Torah. It has a tendency to really like attract you and attach you to the physicality of this world. That would be my sort of trying to explain something. That's what I am thinking. But that's, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think to strengthen your point also, I think if we think about medicine or other things, so there is a value, there's a lot of value to chokhmah, to other wisdoms, even the other wisdoms besides the Torah. We find that the Talmud, for example, says chokhmah bagoyim ta'amin. You know, if somebody says there's all wisdom by the other nations, you should believe them. Yeah. If he says there's Torah by other nations, you shouldn't, because we should look to the Torah as our moral guide in what to do in life. But there's definitely wisdom in those things. So I don't know if the Talmud is specifically referring to that, but I do think that your point is valid, that is definitely something greater, even in somebody who studies other wisdoms besides the Torah. There is definitely something very special about it that somebody who's just involved in making money will not have. We actually even have a blessing when you see a great scholar, a non-Jewish scholar, but who was great in his field. We actually make a blessing for it. So there is definitely value to chokhmah, the wisdom, to understanding this world. You find that the Rambam, for example, famously very strongly believed in the study of the sciences and believed that that was a way to find your way to God if you see how beautiful is God's world. So I think there's definitely something very detrimental about putting all your strength into business and into making money.
Okay, Jetta had a point. Just have to unmute.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Please put some word about a brood is not sin-fearing. What is that for? Around the word and the point of this. What is that? As in.
Yeah, you're asking. We both struggle with trying to sort of like. Are you asking what is it adding? Like, was it adding to the Mishna, or like or are you trying to define what a brute or ignorant person is? Like what?
Yeah, what is a situation for thinking, or a person, or what? Put some word about it.
Yeah.
Brute is not sin-fearing.
Yeah, like meaning, I guess. To be able to be sin-fearing must mean sin-fearing, I would say, is someone who knows that my actions have consequences. You don't always know what the consequences are going to be.
In many ways.
Yeah. So something. So in other words, if you're a sin-fearing person, that means that you are sort of on a high enough level that you can understand that if I do this, which seems to be something negative, it will affect me negatively. It will affect my environment negatively, and so on and so forth. This person, this bor, seems to be a person who does not have the capability of understanding that like his actions could harm himself and other people.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but it's not the same if you are scared of something. No, it's okay.
That's what I think.
It's not a deep point in a way.
I guess this one is not as deep as the other one, even though a bore could also mean a hole. but I don't think this is what it's talking about.
I think you have to get used to the language of the Talmud. So sin-fearing person, a yerechet, person who is careful not to do sin. That is the meaning of a sin-fearing person. Or we often use also the expression a God-fearing person. Yireh Shamayim. It doesn't mean I'm terrified of God. It means that you are constantly thinking.
Careful.
You're mindful of God, and you understand that
behavior.
you're trying to do God's will at every morning, and you're
yeah.
worried that you might do something wrong. That's the idea.
To have my English is not so well. Carefully.
You could say it in Danish or whatever language. I feel like and I could translate if I.
Yeah. I forgot the point now because altså en hensynsfuld adfærd. En hensynsfuld adfærd. And it can be placed for few persons. God and your neighbor, your friends.
So I think like at the end of the day, it's going to be talking about like towards God, but that's why I said the word consequences. This is a person who understands that your actions have consequences. That's what I would say. And to fear God, like there are other religions that seems to be saying that you should walk around being scared. I don't think at all that's what we're talking about. Rather, you just know that like whatever you do, it's going to have consequences, and you should try to be a person who thinks about it, because it will benefit you if nothing else.
But it gives meaning, a point, this if the word is carefully, to be careful. That gives a good meaning. Important meaning.
Right. Okay. But
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. We had, what time is it? We're running a little bit late. We had one more question from Beniard, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry. iPad 3, if you want to say something. No. Okay. We have. Fine. Should we just finish?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Okay. How do I do? Have the.
We can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. It was about this whom it is too much in business. My association is a person who is a seller. In Swedish, you say försäljartyp. And that kind of person is very good to persuade people to buy things. In fact, it's a person who doesn't listen. He usually listens only to not buy but sell things. And that person doesn't listen too much to other people. He's very good to convince people of his opinions. Buy this car, do that, and in that way you get rich maybe, but you don't get wise. That's my association.
I think that's a very good association, because he will not listen to anyone else but trying to sell his own products or his own ideas, therefore not being open to hearing other opinions. That's a very good point.
But a brute, you said in the beginning that a brute, it wasn't a good translation. It's something else in Hebrew. Unfortunately, I don't know Hebrew, but what could I say instead of brute? I mean, what could I say in Swedish or in German or in French?
In Swedish, I would say en ignorant person.
Okunnig alltså.
Fast inte okunnig, för I'm switching to Swedish. Inte okunnig på det sättet att han, alltså okunnig det är nog mer namaret. Här är det nog mer en person som inte är kapabel till att lära sig.
Som inte lyssnar till andra heller då.
Nej, precis. And now this respect to now you know that I can speak Swedish, which is very good. Should we just finish? If we have, I know it's, but let's just finish it, because this is a interesting thing, and I think it's good for us to just translate what we really think it's talking about. So, Shmuel, just finish this off, and let's.
In a place where there are no men, where there is no one, strive to be a man. Yeah, in a place where there is no one to do it, you do the job, right?
Yeah.
And this is a very strong concept. It's really the concept of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that's very practical to all of us, because all of us come into situations in life where it's your job to do, and you have to feel responsible. You know, we all come with special skills, with special knowledge, with special things, and sometimes you might be the best person to do a certain thing, and you have to stand up for it.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, and I think it's also sometimes feels a bit un-Jewish. You know, we read a few weeks ago in the Torah that Moses, he was extremely humble. He didn't want the job as the leader of the Jewish people, but this is what God insisted on it, and God even criticized him very harshly eventually for going too far. And I think this is again important balance. Like humility is an amazing thing, and we praise humility all around the Talmud. At the same time, humility shouldn't become a reason for us not to take responsibility and just back out from things where we, in a situation where we can contribute and we can achieve.
Right. And it's also, I just want to add, and also very similar, like this seems to be saying also, there are going to be situations when there's no one else to do it, and you have to step up. You have to step up to the challenge, and that, and Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what he eventually did, and I guess that was the criticism, that he was the one that had to step up. But we all find ourselves in these situations where when the world has suddenly come to a point that here's the place where I have to step up, and very often you know that you have to. And so it's not going to come from a place if you don't have a problem with it. But I would say that as a rule, it's going to come from a place of realizing this is a place where I should step up to the challenge. But that's very scary. There are people who take responsibility when they shouldn't take it. That's a different thing. That's gaiva. That's something else. That's people who think too much of themselves. This is saying, like, there are going to be times when you're asked to do something and you have to step up to the challenge. And it could be a simple thing, or it could be something, or it could be a very big thing. It could be a small or big thing. But there are times when you really have to realize that there's a reason you've been asked this, or there's a reason you have come to this situation, where you sort of realize that, like, if I don't do something here, it's not going to happen. And that's what I would say.
Okay. Very good. Does anybody have any ideas to point out on this?
To be in possession of humble, ethical intuition, this is opposed to being ignorant and unable to pursue the sub-righteous situations. Yeah, very good. But we should be humble. Don't think this is saying for you. Like, I just want to emphasize that this is telling you, be humble, and a humble person should realize there are times when you have to, like, do something which you're not used to doing, or like be in a situation, or being in the focus of attention, or being in like be the one who is leading. You have to become a leader sometimes. You have to be. And Moshe Rabbeinu is a very good example of learning how to be a leader, because he's struggling, and that's fine. Yeah, that's a good idea to listen to Moshe, to learn from Moshe Rabbeinu in general. Does anyone have anything else to add? Otherwise, I think we're 6 minutes over, and we're in Scandinavia, or the Nordic countries at least. So we have to be on time, no?
Sometimes I think we have to be more strong and say what we are thinking of when it's happening in the societies, bad things, but we are not telling, we're not saying anything, like what is happening today in Sweden. I don't want to say in a political way, but I say it.
Yeah, not to be indifferent. I feel like you're saying that, like, you can't just, like, yeah, that I hear. We all know what happens if you're indifferent. That's very nice.
And that you can give your conflict, and you can get enemies, but you have to stand for your belief.
Yeah, that's also true. There are times when you have to do. There are times when you sort of have to put your foot down. But anytime you have to do that, it still has to come from a place of thought and introspection and really thinking it through and not acting on an impulse. This is not saying to act on an impulse. This is saying to be a thoughtful person, to be someone who does it because you realize this is what I have to do. That's something I really want to emphasize. We don't act on impulse if it's like as a rule. We think things through and really like weigh the different things and see like what's the benefit, what's the pros and cons and so forth before we go. We have like a foresight in the way we act. I think that's a very Jewish thing, happens to be. Shmuel, do you have any last thoughts?
I think if we look at this Mishnah as a whole, and everything we've said today about being the simpleton, about wisdom, I think it's a lot of it is about having a desire for wisdom, understanding that knowledge is important. At the same time, it's very important for you to know the facts. It's important to study Torah, not to get overly excited and run into a direction before you've chosen your direction. But once you know what the direction is, then just as people said here in the audience, be ready to stand up for your rights. If you know something is right. And in a way, this closed the circle. We started the evening with my example of the person who screams out at another Jew and embarrasses him in public when he's trying to rebuke him. The other side of the coin is if there is a problem and there are people doing things wrong and other people might learn from them, then you do have to react. You have to find the right way and the correct way to react. But you can't stand still and pretend nothing has happened, because people will learn from bad ways and people will be influenced. So those would be my way to sum up, so to say, what we've learned tonight.
That's very true. I just saw now that Daniel wanted to say something. Do you want to say something very quickly? Because I feel bad that I didn't see it. If everyone is okay, even though that was a very nice summary. Thank you, Shmuel. But Daniel, be a mensch. That's if more people.
Hello.
But Daniel, do you want to say something quickly?
Yes, I say hello, everybody. I just joined the lesson a while ago. And while I'm listening about that and giving knowledge to the people, I just remember I heard a lesson not long time ago. And this Hasidic rabbi was saying that waking up stupid people can be a mistake. It's to not wake up stupid people is like a pikuach chesed, a pikuach nefesh. It's equivalent to a mitzvah, which means if I give too much light to a vessel which is not correctly set, I may make a problem. And I've been down that line when I tried to wake up people in the middle of the crisis of vaccination and all the mess was around. And I got just enemies just by saying the truth. Now, the time gave me the reason, doesn't matter. But I reasoned and I just realized that it was that. I mean, you can give that if there is place for that, but sometimes it's better to shut the mouth instead to get in troubles.
Yeah.
But that's my comment. So how much that I can give at the point that everything breaks down.
It was a very Hasidic thought, and it is true. Sometimes too much light into a vessel will just break it. Yes, therefore we have to make ourselves into a kli, into a vessel that could receive. That's what we're doing here. And with those words, I want to say thank you so much. It's always a tremendous pleasure to be part of this Nordic Bet Midrash. It was very nice to finally learn together with you, Rav Shmuel. This is our first time together, so
Thank you. Likewise.
Very, very nice. And to all of you who came, have a fantastic continuation of this evening and the week. And soon Purim is coming and Pesach is also coming, so start preparing because Pesach is here pretty soon. Thank you so much.
תודה רבה.
תודה רבה.
Bye.